Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Matters Ago. Today, I wanted to talk about why, in some cases, gatekeeping is good and partially why people like to gatekeep. Now, if you're not familiar with the term to gatekeep something, let's take music for example, being the most common case of it. It's when you try to basically, how do I put this, keep the posers out. You might be very secular about who you share it with, and you might anyone who's not really familiar with that particular culture, thing, music, whatever it may be, you might push aside due to their ignorance on the topic. And I get why people do this because, in a way, it's a way of preserving the purity and the integrity of that culture, or especially with music. For instance, if you look at something like technical death metal or other like more niche sort of genres that never really became really big and mainstream in any sort of meaningful way, they've sort of kept their integrity over the years. Yeah, they've sort of evolved and changed in ways that some people might not like, and stuff like that, but it has kind of kept its core principles and stayed true to itself, especially with death metal, that being a great example. The gatekeepers in that community have basically stopped it from being able to get so popular that it becomes something that's viable to people who really just want to make money. If you want to make a lot of money making music, death metal's probably not going to be your first choice for being big and famous like Drake or something. It's something that is sort of gate kept to the point of only having people who really want to do that particular thing. Black metal to an extent is like that, but because of like the crazy stories and lore around it, like with the early days of Mayhem and Bursum, it's sort of been adapted into popular culture and lost some integrity, but for the most part it's still been gatekept enough that if you're making black metal, especially traditional black metal, you're not doing it to get famous, and you're doing it because you just like doing it, and that's your thing that you like to do. Whereas when you take something like especially rap, which has become pretty much the predominantly most popular genre of the last, I'd say, almost 20 years, it's always been in the charts and it's become the cool thing to do. And you will get a lot of people who come in who are basically just posers and are going to portray the stereotypes so they can fit in and make a shitload of cash. I've been saying for years that that's what Drake's doing. He's like a rich kid from Canada who was like a child actor. He wasn't super rich, but he was relatively well off. He lived a pretty good upbringing with his mum, who looked after him and loved him very much. Not really the gangster from the hood kind of guy that you would expect when you listen to his music. I've always found it very cringe that, he's come in and, I'm black, so of course I'm in a gang, mob shit. Not really, dude. What are you fucking talking about? Me personally, I fucking love that last verse in Not Like Us, where Kendrick Lamar just basically said what I've been trying to articulate for years, that this guy is just a poser, leeching off the struggles of other people to make a name for himself. And unfortunately, how could that not happen in hip hop? I mean, Drake being the most popular example, but we all know there's many rappers out there portraying the life so they can fit in and make a shitload of money. And why? Because people didn't gatekeep those genres. They kind of wanted the fame and all that, and that's fine. You want to get your music out there to a lot of people, but the downside to that is it's going to lose its integrity. A lot of people are going to join and they're going to just manipulate things and just basically milk it dry for money, which is what we're seeing, especially with drill or trap rap, where it's like back in the days with hip hop, there's always been that gangster street element to it, but back in the day you had your public enemy, and it was more of a self conscious sort of thing. Like, this is our life, and yeah, we live it, but it's not the best outcome for us, and we're hoping to get away from this. Whereas now, in a lot of especially popular rap, you're just seeing them glorify that because they don't really understand, and they'd rather keep portraying that negative stereotype and exacerbating it, and even doing disses that get people killed, or just saying stuff like Bobby Shmurda did on a track that put him in prison just for the fame. These are people who probably should have been gatekept out of the culture and even out of the genre altogether. Like, if you had a very tight-knit community around your culture that sort of gatekept it and protected it from a loss of integrity and whatnot, we wouldn't have the issues that we're seeing with that genre today. And the crazy thing is, especially with rap being a street music that, expresses the realness and rawness of the experience, especially for the marginalized African Americans. this has been their form to get out there and be like, yo, this is what's happening out there. And now it's just morphed into, this is what's happening out there, gang shit, brr, skit. And you got like bloody white schoolgirls in the suburbia being like, brr, gang shit. Like, you glorifying the absolute destruction of your people. And that probably wouldn't have happened if there was more people gatekeeping hip hop and more people, keeping it secular and pure to itself, which is what you do see with the people out there who are still doing the more traditional boom bap kind of style of rap, or even just a more traditional style of telling your story type of rap. Those people have kept their integrity. Those people are still, putting meaningful songs out and things that aren't damaging or glorifying things that really shouldn't be glorified. And I'm not here to preach that music should be censored or anything, but you have to admit, I mean, just as an observer, watching what's happened to the culture, especially with hip hop, because that being the most, the one that's documented the most and the one that's put in our face the most, it's seen an absolute degradation. It went from like an uplifting thing of like, we're in the hood, but one day we're going to be in the hills living large, to we in the hood, we have the money to live large now, but we're still in the hood because gang shit. It's deluded the minds of young people and made them think that you come from this life and you should stay loyal to that really shit circumstance. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. Like hearing that, like, major AAA rappers are getting killed up in the hood. In the hood, what are you doing in the hood? I don't, this whole thing of like, you got to keep it gangster and all that is damaging. And it's kind of a thing that was made when, because it wasn't gatekept, white people came into the genre and they went, this gangster stuff makes a lot of money. And over the years, they've sort of taken it from a cautionary tale about that life and turned it into something that's cool, and that's something that even people living that life think is cool and want to continue doing. It's completely diluted and ruined the idea of what that music was originally supposed to do. Even the sound of it has completely changed. Like I said, there are still rappers out there, and even some like Eminem or fucking Joyner Lucas in the charts, and people of that ilk, or even Kendrick Lamar, who are still being lyrical and whatnot. But the main, most popular part of the genre, if we're honest, is the part that's damaging the culture the most. And this is a white guy from Australia saying this, just as an observer of the music, that even I can notice the degradation, where it started and how it got to that point. And it all came from just not gatekeeping your genre. KRS-One is an example of a person who's like a hip-hop advocate, I'd call him, where he's tried to, reach out to people and tell them the importance of keeping the genre pure, but because so many people are coming in and so much money is involved and fame and other things like that has been manipulated to the point that the culture itself has been damaged. Like, it's actually like ruined a culture for an entire people in a country. Like, it used to be an uplifting thing about a way to get away from problems, and now it's a thing to exacerbate problems and even fund those problems and make them even worse. There is a correlation between a massive weaponry in these ghettos and this idea that when you get rich and famous, you got to look after the hood. Like, I'm not saying completely abandon the hood, but do like Dre did. Put a university there or something. Don't go back on some drill shit and fucking take a bunch of guns and drugs there and ruin your people even more. And it's just terrible to see. And when you compare it to other, cultures and genres, especially of music or even entertainment in general, you notice that the ones that were more gate-kept, or even just were accidentally gate-kept by the fact they just stayed niche, have kept their integrity and have improved over time. Production gets better, the ideas evolve over time, and they've been able to flourish away from the spotlight, whereas the stuff that's in the spotlight has been completely manipulated. Country is a great example of that as well. Like, you look at what country was in its original roots and what it did, and now it's something that you see being used for like car commercials. It's completely lost its integrity. It's completely lost all like its meaning. And I know I sound like a bit of a boomer saying, oh, music has changed, but there is a lot of music out there that's changed for the better. And even some country artists that get really big are still good, but you can't deny that, the lack of gatekeeping with those genres and their popularity has kind of diluted them and ruined them in a sense, you could argue. And again, these are all just the opinions of a guy who's mad as a goat. Very true. Good observation. Well done. But I'm just a pattern I've noticed with, gatekeeping. It is somewhat beneficial, even though on the surface it may seem completely damaging to a culture and whatnot, but kind of keeping it pure to the people who really want to get invested and know about it. It does, it's good in that aspect. I don't know, these are just a bunch of random thoughts I've thrown out of my brain onto a video. And look, thanks for watching. That was another episode of Mad as a Goat. I'll see you next time.